Again, we're dealing with the problem of implication and contrast in Katherine Mansfield's Stranger. So what are the details twirling the folded umbrella might inform the readers? Does the fact that he seemed to be the leader come to clash with his nervous marching up and down? Later, the writer again emphasizes the fact that Mr. Hammond was nervous and at the same time friendly and confiding. Mr. Hammond's quick, eager glance, so nervous and yet so friendly and confiding, took in everybody. Literary contrast is the juxtaposition of disparate or opposed images, ideas or both, to heighten and clarify a scene, theme, or episode. So, what is the role of contrast throughout the story? When and why does the author employ this literary device in the story? What is the role of contrast in the exposition? Does the author refer to this literary device when she draws character sketches? Pay attention to the character's discourse, how she addresses her husband. Well, darling, have you been waiting long? John, dear. Darling, do you mind? I just want to go and say goodbye to the doctor. Darling, she said, don't frighten me. Stand still, I want to look at you. I haven't seen you yet. You have had your beard beautifully trimmed, and you look younger, I think, and decidedly thinner. Bachelor life agrees with you. Do, darling. Nothing, darling. I've just found the children's letters. Don't do that, dear. No, darling, not a word. You're not sorry. I told you, John, darling. It hasn't made you sad. It hasn't spoilt our evening, our being alone together. As you noticed, the character employs a lot of endearing words and phrases. So, what do you think? Is estrangement between the wife and husband expressed verbally in the story? And what do you think? Why the story is called Stranger? Who is a stranger in the story? And now let us discuss narrative modes in Stranger. All critics give emphasis to the fact that Katherine Mansfield's Stranger is written in many shifts of the narrative. Heterodiegetic and homodiegetic narrator. Generally, a narrator is the speaker or voice of the narrative discourse. He or she is the agent who establishes communicative contact with an addressee, who manages the exposition, who decides what is to be told, how it is to be told, especially from what point of view and in what sequence, and what is to be left out. According to Janet, a narrator is called heterodiegetic if he or she does not take part in the narrated action. Such kind of narrator is usually omniscient, all-knowing, or has at least a detailed overview of what is going on at any place of the story at any time. According to Janet, a homodiegetic narrator is a character in the narrated world that he or she describes and gives his or her subjective experiences. Find passages in the story containing heterodiegetic and homodiegetic narration. And now about entrusted narrative. Kukharenko states that in contemporary prose, in an effort to make his writing more plausible, to impress the reader with the effect of authenticity of the described events, the writer entrusts some fictitious character who might also participate in the narrated events with the task of storytelling. The writer himself thus hides behind the figure of the narrator, presents all the events of the story from the latter's viewpoint, and only sporadically emerges in the narrative with his own considerations, which may reinforce or contradict those expressed by the narrator. This form of the author's speech is called entrusted narrative. The structure of the entrusted narrative is much more complicated than that of the author's narrative proper, because instead of once commanding organizing image of the author. We have the hierarchy of the narrator's image, seemingly arranging the pros and cons of the related problem, and looming above the narrator's image, there stands the image of the author, the true and actual creator of it all, responsible for all the views and evaluations of the text and serving the major and predominant force of textual cohesion and unity. Entrusted narrative can be carried out in the first person singular, when the narrator proceeds with his story openly and explicitly from his own name, as for example in The Catcher in the Rye by Salinger, or The Great Gatsby by Scott Fitzgerald, or All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren, etc.